Hey guys, how you doing? Thanks for tuning in. Spirit of Vinyl. I'm Craig. Hope you guys all had a great week. I'd like to thank Mike from MGK Boston. Gave me a shout out the other day. It's my first shout out. I was super excited. I went and watched his video. He just put a video out earlier today, actually, and he mentioned me in it, and I was pretty excited. And then I went over to my channel and saw he'd commented, so he's down below. I'm assuming all you guys watch him. If you don't, Mike, MGK Boston. So this week I was thinking, I came home the other day and basketball is on television, college basketball, because it's March Madness time. And I'm like, oh, that's a good idea. I wonder what records were released in March throughout the year. So I went back and went to Wikipedia, went back to 1974, started writing down the ones I had all the way through. Got to a list. I ended up with a lot more that I could do on one episode. So I picked some of my favorite albums or ones, for me, so the first one I picked, Dress to Kill, 1975. This is Kiss's third record. And it didn't really break him yet. They didn't really break until basically Alive kind of broke him a little bit. But when Destroyer came out, that's when they really broke. But this is a really good record. Room Service. This is one that's got Rock and Roll Night on. That's the one everybody would know, of course. Rock Bottom, Come On and Love Me. It's a great album. I don't think it gets the credit it deserves. The next one I picked was another Kiss album. Destroyer comes out in March 1976, a year later. This is the album that breaks Kiss. This is the one, this is their iconic, the big one. This is their Sgt. Pepper's or whatever it is. So we all know this record if you listen to Kiss at all. We all know Destroyer and what that was. It's got this cool, iconic cover on it. Detroit Rock City's on here. God of Thunder. So that's I'm a Kiss fan, as you can tell. So I love both of those albums anyway. Next up, Runaways, 1976 debut album. Cherry Bombs, the big hit on this. This is what introduces us to Lita Ford and Joan Jett and Cherry Curry and all those wonderful women here. I just got this like a year ago. Went into the record store. Somebody sold. They got some Runaways albums. They had 3 or 4. I bought them all. But this is the one that happened to come out in March of 1976. So I'm going to go next in 1979. Van Halen 2 comes out. This is, Dance the Night Away. You're No Good. Early Van Halen, really good stuff. Really, really great album. I like that album. It's not one of my favorites. Another one of my favorites is on here also. Happens to have come out in March. Van Halen 2 is not really one of my favorites. The first one's so good and iconic, so the second one doesn't really hit quite as hard for me. So, Angel Witch, 1980. This is one of the records that I found in the dumpster that I've mentioned multiple times. I've listened to it a couple times. It's great new wave of British heavy metal. This album is one of those iconic records of that era. If you're into that era, you know this album. I never had this until I found it, and I've listened to it enough. I haven't become obsessed with it or anything, but it's really good. That early, Maiden sound, that type of sound. So, Van Halen. This is one of my favorite Van Halen albums right here. Women and Children First comes out in 1980. It's got the Cradle of Rock. Could This Be Magic? Loss of Control. Take Your Whiskey Home. Everybody Wants Some. Came out in March of 1980. Number of the Beast, 1982. Obviously, one of the most iconic albums. It doesn't introduce us to Bruce Dickinson's, but it's Bruce Dickinson's first album with Iron Maiden, coming from Samson beforehand. This really blows Iron Maiden up and makes Iron Maiden more mainstream. If you're a metal guy, we all know this. I just assume everybody who's watching knows these albums, but I guess I should, be a little better. Yeah. But yeah, Children of the Dam, The Prisoner, 22, Acacia Avenue, Run to the Hills. This one, the reason, I picked this one out of a lot of the other lists, to kind of shorten this a little bit, I guess you'd say. Quiet Riot's Metal Health comes out in 1983, goes to number one. It's the first heavy metal album to ever just go to number one, and it blew 80s metal up. Without this album, I don't think we would have had that revolution that happened, that Sunset Strip stuff. This is the one that really blew that scene wide open. So, I mean, you've got to give this album's iconic. Of course, the band's still around, but it's just Rudy and other guys. ZZ Top Eliminator. This also came out in 83, same year as Quiet Riot did. So this is the album that really broke ZZ Top mainstream also in the 80s. I didn't know about ZZ Top is, in 83, I'm 14 years old. I didn't know about ZZ Top till this album came out. Didn't realize they're been around for years and years or whatever. All that came later. If it wasn't for this and MTV and the car and the girls and everything else, this is probably their best selling record and is their most popular record, you'd have to say. All right, so now we're going to go 1986, and this happens right here. Quite arguably, maybe the greatest metal album ever made. Maybe. I have a hard time because being a big Megadeth fan, it's always the argument. But this is Master of Puppets, and there's nothing else to be said about that. This came out in March of 1986. This is the record that broke Metallica mainstream also. Something about the 80s, breaking a whole bunch of huge bands mainstream. Same with this one here, Anthrax Among the Living. 1987, March 1987. This is Anthrax's biggest record. This is also the one that broke them, made them a household name, just like Master of Puppets made Metallica a household name. This album made Anthrax a household name. And the next album I wanted to, a little bit here, Whitesnake 87. This also made Whitesnake a household name. This is the one that broke them worldwide. In America, Slide It In, like I talked about last week, was kind of pushing them forward a little bit, but this is the one that really solidified it. This came out in March of 1987. So that's just some albums that came out in March. You can go out and look in your collection, pick your own. It's not that hard to find. And pick your own and do the same thing. It's kind of cool. I mean, you'd be surprised how many records came out in March. Like I said, I first started that. I went to 1974, and there's, Eagles on the Border and Def Leppard's All Through the Night's in this list, and there's a whole bunch of other ones that came out in March of, I just went back to 74 as far back as I went. I figure 50 years is far enough, right? And by the time I hit 2000, it started to thin out real bad for me. That's the way my collection goes. The last one I wrote down was Wisconsin Death Trip in 1999. And then about 2010, I stopped because I hadn't hit anything for a decade in there. So, but I ended up with 20 or 30 that were just released in March. So you never know what you're going to find out there. It was just a kind of a weird thing I thought I'd do for the night. So hope you guys all have a great weekend and everything else. Hopefully I can do a show in a couple more days. Maybe this weekend's really going to be hectic. That's why I decided to throw this out here tonight. All right. Thanks again to Mike at MGK Boston. I really appreciate it. And I'll see you guys later. Have a good one, guys.